Have you heard of Notting Hill? It's the 1999 romantic comedy starring Julia Roberts, essentially playing a fictionalized version of herself alongside Hugh Grant, and represented a comeback of sorts for both of these figures in the public eye. It also may feature one of the most toxic, terrible protagonists in any romantic comedy of all time. This is Dan Versus, in which I, Dan, take on a movie, old, new, or otherwise, and in this video I'm going to be taking on Notting Hill, making the case for and against 1999's Notting Hill, the romantic comedy that defined a decade. Entering into this process, what did I know about the movie Notting Hill? Very simply, I knew it was a movie where Julia Roberts played herself, kind of. Ultimately, that summary is not necessarily accurate. The film follows William Thacker, played by Hugh Grant, a charming bookseller in the Notting Hill district of London. His life takes an unexpected turn when Anna Scott, wink wink Julia Roberts, a world-famous Hollywood actress, walks into his bookshop. This chance encounter leads to a series of meetings, including a memorable moment in which the two of them kiss, ultimately become lovers and friends. And now, outside of just knowing that this was kind of an autobiographical film by Julia Roberts, I also knew that people freaking love this movie. This movie is very well reviewed. It is sitting in 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, 3.7 on Letterboxd, 7.2 average score on IMDb, and people who love this genre of romantic comedy very frequently point to this movie as a key cornerstone of their love for the genre. So why do people love this movie? Let's make the case for Notting Hill. Now, to begin, this movie just features peak likable Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, two of the most charming actors and actresses on the planet. There's just something extremely likable, extremely charming about both of them, and in watching both of them kind of interact and get to know each other. Their initial meet cute is really funny. There's some really just funny moments peppered throughout this movie. Next up, this is an elite friend group movie. The way these people interact, Hugh Grant's friend group, is so incredible. The ball busting, the energy, it is so real, it feels so lived in, and to me, that is what probably makes this movie the most rewatchable of anything. I'm going to touch into some of my criticism in the next section, but this is all positive. This is all about making the case for the movie, and I think the strongest case, even outside of how likable Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts are within their respective roles, is just how likable the friend group is and how you can see the way that they sort of give each other a hard time. It really feels lived in. I feel like I was kind of hanging out with friends. It felt like a sitcom-like relationship that they have, which leads me into the best scene of the movie, the dinner scene where Will brings Julia Roberts to meet all his friends. Again, there's something so real about this whole scene, the way that nobody can really believe that they have this movie star at their dinner, the way Hugh Grant's friend is kind of talking to Julia Roberts, asking her what she made on her last movie, and when she tells him $15 million, he's essentially just, his jaw drops to the floor. The way that the chef is not a very good chef, and the way that his wife and their friends kind of pretend that he is one and joke with him about not being one, it is just very, very realistic, feels really fun, and the dialogue in that scene really crackles. Next up, the music in this movie is incredible. I think it's really topped off by this montage of the seasons passing set to Bill Withers' Ain't No Sunshine. Very cool montage. Kind of high-level filmmaking for a film that is ostensibly just a romantic comedy. This is kind of the stuff that you saw fall by the wayside as romantic comedies got a little bit more schlocky over the next decade as we enter into the 2000s, and they're being made for cheaper, and the filmmakers are not really incorporating this kind of high-level montage, music, filmmaking, and it's sort of hitting everything. Next up, there's some really great meta-commentary going on in this movie. This is Hugh Grant's first major film following his 1996 arrest for soliciting a sex worker in Hollywood, and also Julia Roberts herself had been hounded by the press in the years leading up to this movie following her canceled engagement / wedding to Kiefer Sutherland. So obviously this movie is interacting with that whole relationship of the media and the press and the paparazzi and their relationship to stardom, to film stardom. And I really enjoyed that meta commentary between what was going on in these people's lives at the time and the way in which Anna Scott's life is kind of completely robbed of any sense of privacy. Now, that's all great. It's all really nice things I had to say about the movie. I get why people like the movie. But this is now time for the case against Notting Hill. And for me, the case against Notting Hill is very simply, very straightforward. Julia Roberts' character in this movie is maybe the worst character in the history of romantic comedies. She is horrible to Will, to Hugh Grant's character, basically from the jump. Their first interaction ends with her randomly kissing him, only to then find out that she has a boyfriend that she doesn't tell him about, who is played by Alec Baldwin, who is one of the most reprehensible people in this movie ever. He has one scene and he is throwing 100 miles per hour. He is just such a prick in that one scene to Hugh Grant, essentially treating him like the help. And on top of that, even when Julia Roberts comes back to Will months later, after her nude pictures have been leaked to the press, he takes her in, they spend a night together, and then the paparazzi shows up, and once again she treats him like garbage. And basically tells him he couldn't possibly understand what goes on in her life. And now, I understand that there are a lot of gender politics going on within that relationship, but at the same time, she's just not a very nice person. She's extremely toxic throughout this movie. Even when they have a chance to rekindle their flame, Anna Scott, Julia Roberts, tells her co-star while Will is listening that he's just some guy, he's just some random guy, and downplays their relationship once again. Constantly mistreated by her. Finally, at the end of the movie, Hugh Grant's character grows a spine and declines to reunite with Anna Scott. And finally, those people, or most people, I think, in 2025 who watch this movie are going to say, oh, thank God, he finally did it. He finally grew a spine. Unfortunately, they immediately rescind that because his friends are like, dude, she's a movie star. What are you doing? Why are you not going back to that movie star who wants to date you for God knows what reason? You run a travel bookstore. You have no other career prospects. You need to basically lock down this movie star. So, unfortunately, he does go back to her, and it results in this very cool scene that kind of ends the movie here, where he goes to this press conference for Anna Scott announcing her retirement. Not something that I think would happen now. People would hold the press conference. She would probably just, release on Instagram Live that she was taking some time away from acting rather than holding a press conference. A very dated sort of part of this movie, on top of the fact that, once again, Will earns money by selling travel books. That's the only books that he sells in his store. Insane thing to talk about in the year 2025. So, once again, the case against Notting Hill is very simply Anna Scott's horrible. She's just a terrible, terrible person. The other sort of key thing here is Will's relationship with his sister is weird. He doesn't look like his sister. He goes to her birthday earlier in the movie, and they just have kind of a weird, almost romantic energy. She's just a strange character in general. But it turns out, if you read the novelization of the original script that was eventually published by the director and by the writer here, it turns out that in the initial script, his sister's character, Hugh Grant's sister's character, was meant to be a love interest who was meant to play off of Anna Scott and be the one who he ultimately ended up with. She works at a record store across the street, and she was supposed to play against the idea of this unattainable Hollywood woman. He would end up with her at the end of the movie. Ultimately, that's not what happened, obviously. And then I guess they just kept the character in by making her his sister. Okay, that's sort of a strange choice as far as I'm concerned, but that's filmmaking, baby. That's why they're in the big bucks. I'd like to end these videos with a little bit of fun trivia about the movie. And here, I already mentioned one of these pieces of trivia that Honey, Hugh Grant's sister, was originally supposed to be a love interest, and ultimately she was kept in as this weird sister with a weird love energy to her brother. Now, the other piece of trivia here is that Anna Scott is asked how much she made on her last film, Julia Roberts, and she says $15 million. Now, in the behind-the-scenes sort of stories you hear, the other actor involved in that scene mentioned that throughout the many different cuts and the many different takes of that scene, Julia Roberts would say a couple different numbers, $5 million, $10 million, ultimately saying $15 million in the cut that made the film. And when the other actor asked her why, Julia Roberts said that she was tired of lowballing herself. So where do I end up on Notting Hill? Overall, I really, really like this movie as a romantic comedy. The fact that Julia Roberts' character is so unlikable, the fact that she is so terrible, really prevents this movie from being anything more than a 2.5-star movie to me. This has been Dan Versus. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more of these videos. Until later, I will talk to you guys soon. Bye now.